Okay, so this is going to be an attempt to talk about how I feel about Neil Gaiman and the accusations that sound pretty sound about what he's done with sexual assault and the way that a reader and a fan would react. I can only talk for myself, but I'm going to try and articulate my feelings about it in a general sense as well, not just about Neil Gaiman, but in general about my attitude to this sort of thing. I've never tackled this sort of thing on the channel before. I'm a little bit worried that I won't say what I mean to say in the way that I mean to say it, so it's clear what I'm saying. Like that bit just then. So yeah, Neil Gaiman. A bit of context. He was one of my favourite people in literature, separate from the work actually, which is one of the things I can very clearly say right from the start. That I was very excited to spend a whole day pretty much going to see him in the evening, but going to see the opening of The Ocean at the End of the Lane, a road down near me, when he opened it himself, snapped the ribbon, talked about how pleased he was to come from this area and all that, and then did a big talk at the Guildhall and did 2 readings. And it was just a lovely day, and I was so pleased to meet him. Got a couple of books signed. It was a big deal. I went with a friend, and she was very excited. I haven't spoken to her about this actually yet. Yeah, that was a big deal. So he's someone I've got a lot of his books, and I've read his books for a long time, and he's the author of one of my treasured books as well that I've had since I was like, I don't know, 13 or something, 12, I can't remember. But and I've talked about that book a lot on the channel. So yeah, finding out that someone that you do respect and like as a person, they're not the person you thought they were. And you know, like Amanda Palmer's not, she's not said a lot, but she's, I discovered that she'd written some lyrics that could be a veiled statement of disappointment and anger about the whole thing. She certainly hasn't come out to defend him like some people do in these situations. Yeah, there's a big picture that makes it pretty damning, and yeah, it's a massive shock. I mean, he's one of those people as well that is literally every book that comes out has got a blurb by him advertising the book. And one of the things that's interesting as far as this book goes, when this came out, The Essential Ellison, Greatest Hits. It was great that it came out. Essential Ellison's been out ages. This is a big deal for me, being a Harlan Ellison fan, which I'll talk about in a second. But having a forward by Neil Gaiman made absolute sense because they were friends. It was also a really nice thing to find, and it's a really good forward. And you know, that sort of thing is not uncommon. He was respected to the point where a lot of people wanted to use his recommendation or his endorsement. So this has huge ripples in that sense in publishing in general, I think, because of that kind of thing. It's not to the level of Stephen King getting accused of something like this, but he is one of those people that's everywhere. Neil Gaiman is everywhere. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Neil Gaiman was also behind and kind of almost narrated and was on screen for a lot of this documentary, amazing documentary, which I have on DVD about Harlan Ellison as well. But yeah, I've read many of his books, and some of his books are some of my favourite books. And me and a couple of other friends were talking about doing a Neil Gaiman deep dive as well before this all came out. We haven't actually suggested it anymore. And it wouldn't have been that weird. You know, people talk about Neil Gaiman all the time, or did. Now they're talking about it in a different context, obviously. But you know, he was huge. So it's very strange that someone like him has this apparently very it's very supportive, if that's the right word, accusation. It sounds like it's very supported by lots of evidence and lots of other people that think it's a very strong case. I'm usually quite cynical about this sort of thing. When I first heard about it, I was like, oh God, someone else accused. And I didn't really take it that seriously. But obviously, the more things come out, the more real it is. And you think, actually, this is not just a person being innocently accused of something. I need to move on to say that I am, in general, quite cynical about what the real people are behind the art that we love. Whereas I think maybe a lot of people would expect the authors of their favourite books to be great people, I don't, and I'm usually pleased when they are, rather than the other way around. Rather than disappointed that they're not, I'm pleased that they are. So the more I find out about Ray Bradbury, the more reassuring it is. He doesn't seem to have been a horrible person. The more I find out about Richard Matheson, the same thing goes. I haven't heard anything horrible about Ursula K. Le Guin. Harlan Ellison's a complicated one, which I'll talk about in a second. Charles Bukowski is a complicated one. I'm just thinking about some of the authors that have really affected me in my life. When I was a child, or like early teens, sort of 12, 13, I discovered the Belgariad series by David Eddings. And obviously, fairly recently, there's been really horrible stories about what David Eddings did, which has actually subconsciously put a pause on me rereading the Belgariad, actually. But I'm never going to forget the fact that that had a big impact on me as a child. Same as I think a lot of people talk like that about Harry Potter. But I'm older, so I've never read the Harry Potter books. But what he did is a lot worse than anything I've said, I think. I think that's the worst case I can think of. I mean, that's literally child abuse. So that's horrific. That's the worst thing you can do. But, you know, I don't... It was shocking because it was so bad what he did. But I'm not shocked when I find out that an old, like I don't know, somebody like, when I found out H.P. Lovecraft was racist, it was slightly disappointing. I'm not a massive fan of Lovecraft, but it was slightly disappointing. But I also thought, yeah, that's not that weird, you know. So I can be quite cynical on that kind of thing. But with Neil Gaiman, he was so present. He was, you know, I've seen him talk so much. I've seen him support other people. When he put up that thing, when Terry Pratchett was accused of being transphobic, and Neil Gaiman put up a thing on Twitter saying he is not. None of his books have put any sentences that suggest that. This is just wrong in all sorts of ways. And it was really great seeing him defend his friend Terry Pratchett. But it was also, you know, because Terry Pratchett wasn't around to defend himself. But also it was kind of consistent with other things that Neil Gaiman was and his public persona. So that's why it's really shocking. And it felt easy to like him. With Harlan Ellison, you know, Harlan Ellison is a complicated guy, I think, because he seems like politically sound. He was very aggressively anti-racist and aggressively feminist. He felt very strongly about things that he was on the right side of politics, I think. As in not the right side, but you know what I mean, the correct side of politics. But he seemed like a lot of people called him an asshole, and he was clearly very obnoxious, very egocentric, and very rude. You know, so I'm sure he wasn't a nice person in the sense of his personality, but I think I would be surprised if he got accused of something really bad like Neil Gaiman has. But again, this is over a period of I think initially when I first discovered him, I didn't expect him to be a nice person, especially the vitriol and the aggressive bite in his writing. You know, it wouldn't have been that weird if he was horrible. And that's one of the things as well, isn't it? That sometimes that nastiness in your personality comes out in the writing in a way that has a huge impact. Because then you can talk about Charles Bukowski, because Charles Bukowski is a man with quite a unique life, I think. And when I read the biography on him, it was a pretty bleak read, and it wasn't because of things that happened to him, but just he was just not a nice person, and he had such a irreverent, cynical, existential attitude to his life that he didn't care what he did to himself or to other people. So you know, that's kind of the world that his work lives in anyway. So it kind of makes sense. But that's what's so weird about Neil Gaiman, that his fantasy writing is quite cozy, it's quite fluffy, and it seems like it comes from a good heart, and yet he's been accused by 2 people of very serious sexual assault, repeated sexual assault, I think, as well. So, what do I do about it? I have still got a few books I haven't read by him, and I'm going to read those books. I'm not just going to get rid of his books. I'm curious to know what they're like. I'm not going to do that readathon that I was talking about earlier. And I probably will mention that I'd read it, but I wouldn't go on about it and do separate book reviews and tell people to buy it and all that kind of stuff. But if I do read something I haven't got, I still haven't read American Gods, and I still haven't read Good Omens. I've read a lot of his other stuff. But if I do read those, I don't think I'll probably mention it in my wrap up, but it'll probably be a passing comment. So, yeah, that's kind of my attitude, really. I don't know what's going to happen to his career, because, you know, if this clearly this court case is going to continue, but even if he's proved innocent, sometimes this sort of thing sticks anyway, and he might nosedive anyway. But it does look like he's not innocent anyway. So I'm sure if it's all finished and it's all clear that he's guilty and all that sort of stuff, then his career will be finished anyway. But yeah, these things are very shocking. I resisted doing a video like this because I wasn't sure if I could add anything, but I don't know. I think I do try to. Well, I do successfully separate the author from the work. And I can usually read something and then just read it independently and have an opinion about the book regardless. But I'm not gonna do separate reviews on here of his books, and I'm not gonna do that readathon. I think that's the upshot of how it's affected my input on my channel. And probably if it's anything like the Belgariad, I might even subconsciously delay me reading those other books I've read by him, just because, you know, I'll just gravitate towards something else. I don't know. But, yeah, it's quite shocking. As I said, he seemed like somebody that was very easy to like as a person, and that's kind of one of the shocking things, really. You get these new things. And you know, I am naturally cynical about celebrities, and you know, you shouldn't necessarily expect them to be lovely, but he was quite public and visible, and he seemed like a nice person. He clearly isn't. So there we are. So nothing massively revelatory in this video, but comment below if you can relate to any of that. I do think it's quite a serious thing that's happened, and I feel for the people that have experienced this and are accusing him, because you know, this sort of thing is just unforgivable. All right, thanks for watching. Stay curious, everybody.